We just need to give them our focus, like to communicate to them through our being. You are so important to me. I've put everything aside. You are the most important. I'm so thrilled to be with you. You make me so happy to be with you. Nothing is important, not the cleaning, not the laundry, not my business, you. Now, when a child gets a sufficient dose of the fact that their parent is just focusing on them, which is not, we don't have to do it more than 30, 40 minutes a day, but really be present. That child feels like, wow, my parent really cares. I am care worthy. I am significant. I am valid. Now they walk out into the world with that strong foundation. Doesn't mean they won't break down. They won't have breakdowns. Doesn't mean they won't, have terrible situations still happen to them. We are not in control of the outcome. We're only in control of how we show up right here, right now.
Guys, welcome Dr. Shefali to the episode. Dr. Shefali, why don't you like headphones?
Why don't I like headphones? Because you are coming from fear that I will not focus.
Okay.
So that's why you set it up that I should wear headphones so I focus. But I don't need to have headphones to focus, see?
But why is it a place of fear?
I think because you already are presuming I'm not going to focus. So
No, it's not the focus. It's just
extremely
like
focused. And that actually distracts me because I feel like I'm being suffocated inside a little box.
I feel like you're going to have a really cool answer for everything that I put to you.
Absolutely.
Okay, you've done this way too many times before for me to catch you up. I'd like to start from the beginning, not way back in the beginning, but just in general, what caused you or motivated you to become a parent coach?
Because we parents are so messed up. And I work with adults, and inevitably, all issues point back to childhood over and over again. So I realized that if I could help parents kind of cope with that initial relationship and kind of help it or fix it, then we have a hope. Because most adults in my therapy practice are pining for what they missed in childhood. So I figured that the parent has a lot to do with this. And I broke it down even more once I became a parent. And I saw really in action what the issue was when I became a parent, because I saw it. Even though I loved my kid and I had the best intentions, I'm not even embarrassed anymore now to say how filled with an ego I was. Like, I didn't care about my kid. I cared about my expectations working out. So once I saw that in action, I realized that that's how I can help parents to deal with their ego, because that's what's standing in the way between parent and child.
I think that's just what's standing in the way in general in life, right? With pretty much everything.
Absolutely.
But were you a parent coach before you had your own child?
I had already, been helping people, but my practice deepened even more. When you become a parent yourself, all your grand ideas about how you would be, they come falling apart. So it was a very humbling experience for me. And it showed me in real time the struggles that we parents have. And it's not the parents' fault per se. They're not bad people. We're not bad. But we're conditioned to think we are supposed to have supreme control. We're conditioned to believe that we know best because we're parents. They come from us, so they belong to us. So we come to the journey on the wrong foot with these lofty ideals that we are in complete control. And that's why we mess up, because we were told that it's okay, you have control, do whatever you want with your child. And if your child doesn't listen, it's called discipline. Spank them, punish them, it's okay. But we are unchecked, we are unsupervised, and we're dangerous in our mania for power.
Did you find that people, for example, when you were doing the parenting coaching before you were parents, initially, again, through ego, would be, yeah, well, you don't have kids, you don't understand what I'm going through. right?
Yeah, and in a
Because it
way
feels
they
like
were right.
it's like action, right? It's like you haven't earned your stripes.
I
This is
agree.
stolen valor that's going on right now. You're telling me, wait till you
Yes.
have a kid and you'll understand.
Yeah, and there's some truth to that. Now,
Mm.
we don't have to have every experience in
Hmm.
life to
Of course.
understand another human being, but there is some truth to, you wake up 16 times a night
Mm.
and you have your kid vomit in your hair every other day, or, or your
Mm.
teenager be rebellious and tell you they hate you. See how that feels. I think it is a worthy experience to personally go
Mm.
through, to realize how incredibly difficult it is to parent a child. I mean, it is incredibly difficult. It's a
Mm.
24/7 job. It's, you can't return them to the shop. They're here to stay.
I've tried. You really
You've
can't.
tried, you can't. No
Yeah,
one
yeah,
takes them back,
yeah.
So, given that it's a life sentence, it comes with a very unique set of circumstances and challenges. And plus, there's no other human being that you really are raising from day one. So there is a truth that you do kind of have to be in charge. So where is that line between, you are responsible, but you're not supposed to take over? Like, it's so easy to take over because, you are in
Mm.
charge. So precisely because you are so, having to be present and be in control, that paradox of, yes, be in charge, but don't over dominate in your control. It's that fine line between being present but not being an ego,
Mm.
that this relationship more than any other poses you with or challenges you with.
Especially because, I mean, I guess the key factor is that you don't have a choice. Like a lot of people who take on very difficult roles, people who go to the army, people who become fighters, people who do that, even though it's, the dedication they have is 24/7, it's the same thing. But the one determining factor is they chose to do that, meaning they can stop at any time. And they knew it was going to be difficult. When we have kids, it's like, yes, that's it now. You have no choice to get out.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, there are people who just decide I'm
Right,
not
but
doing
they're
this anymore.
outliers.
But yeah, but you have no choice.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a beautiful burden, right? It's like, I have to be here. This is both my test in life and their test,
Correct.
right? So
it's a point of
crazy,
no return.
right?
It's once you embark, once the baby is birthed, it's a point of no return. So there's this saying in spirituality, the wisdom of no escape, right? Pema Chodron wrote a book on it. What that means is that once you realize that it's here to stay, with that comes a beautiful surrender. So you can fight it all the way, or resist it all the way, or control it through and through, or you can surrender to the beauty of this partnership. And it should be a partnership. And that's what my work is all about, which is in conscious parenting. Don't do it the traditional way our parents did it. Do it in this conscious parenting model that I teach, where you and your child are partners. And if you look at it that way, they are as much your teacher and your awakener as you are theirs.
I think it's just so interesting what you do, because like I told you before, my wife put me on to you, and kind of leads on to the question, because I have a very different style of parenting now. Like I said, I have a 21-year-old and I have 5-year-old twins. Now, I'll be very frank and be honest. I had my oldest son, when I was 19. It wasn't a choice. It happened, and
Right.
his mother was like, look, with or without you, I'm having this kid.
Right.
So immediately it was a negative experience. And I wouldn't say he was a negative experience.
Sure.
I mean, even up
Sure.
from the start of pregnancy till
Yeah.
child coming, it was this is happening with or without you. And obviously I'm not going to go, okay, without me, I'm bouncing. Right. So immediately there was something there that was difficult to accept,
Sure.
difficult to know that things were changing. When I had my twins now, I was like, I couldn't wait to have children.
Right.
So the dynamic of the two AJs, that one and this one, was different.
Yeah.
So I would do research and I would listen to your stuff that you were doing, and I would read, and my wife would give me things, and I wanted to learn, because I wanted to make things easier for myself. I wanted
Right.
to make things easier for us as a family. Not how hard is it to convince, but there's a lot of people, like you said, ego, right? They're like, look, I'm going to wing it and nobody needs to tell me what to do,
Yeah.
kind of thing. How difficult is it to kind of change people into thinking, hey, look, there are people out there like me who can make things a lot easier. And I don't know if it's a man thing with the ego where it's like, well, I'm not going to have someone else tell me how to raise my kid. But once I started learning these things, it was incredible how much easier things got.
Right.
And once I started understanding why I was doing things, it was just a whole different thing. It was just so much easier. It was, I know why I'm doing this. I know why, both for me and for my children, why I'm doing this. So how difficult is it to make that switch for people to to feel comfortable and not feel like, because in a way you're a therapist, right? And therapy is a big no-no for people. It's like, if I go to a therapist, that means I'm not good enough to figure it out by myself.
Right.
So how do you make that switch with people where they accept the help, but want to accept it and don't see it as a threat to their own ego or their own emotional things?
So humans in general are resistant to growing because we like to keep with the status quo, and it's just, stay with the same. It's so comfortable. Growth is uncomfortable. It takes a lot of discomfort to lean into growth, because growth implies that you have to let go of your attachment to who you were and to life as it was, right? That's growth. You're moving into a new territory of the unknown. So that's very scary for people. And it's typically our tendency to stay safe and comfortable. Parents even more so. But parents, because they were told that they know best, right? So we parents enter this paradigm with a very high level of, pomp and circumstance about ourselves, that we are on a pedestal. These are ours. We can puppeteer them and curate them into becoming these museum pieces. They are a reflection of who it is we are. So we have a lot of ego. So to tell a parent that, hey, you're winging it, you really don't know, and you're just operating from ego, which means you're just doing things the way you think you should without even connecting to the child before you, I get a lot of resistance. This is the one thing that doesn't require a license, no regulation, no supervision, no continuing education. I mean, what audacity we have to think we know how to do this without any training. So when I tell parents that not only you need to learn, but you need to look at yourself, because you are part of the problem, if not the problem. Oh, parents don't like it at all. But that just speaks to their resistance. But slowly, if parents have enough problems, if you have enough of a bad child, I always call the bad child the awakener, because that child is fighting you, not because they are bad, but because they know that you are stampeding them, that you are stifling them. And the bad child, we call that child the bad child because that child is going, hey, back off. I don't want to follow you. I have another way, and I have a mind, and I'm going to fight for my rights. Versus the good child who just, rolls
placid,
over
does
and
whatever,
is passive.
Which is so dangerous as well.
Right, but that we all want the good child. We all dying for the good child, because our ego cannot accept that the child is a sovereign being, and we need to allow the child to grow. But it takes a really powerful parent, a wise parent, who is willing to say, you know what, I'm going to give my child their own inner knowing. I'm going to listen. I'm going to be connected. I'm going to attune rather than just lead the way and have a follower. So it takes a real conscious parent to change the tide. But there are many who are coming to this new way. It's a movement. It's a new way. So hopefully in your region, people will come to it and realize, I was not raised this way. I was raised, if
I was
they
raised
realize,
the Arab way.
I was raised,
Dodging slippers all my life,
the traditional way. I was punished. I was controlled. I was told that to be a good child, I needed to follow. And I don't really want to do that to my kids. So we have a choice as parents to do it a different way, a new way. And it's time to change the paradigm. It's okay to change a better way.
It's so true, because like, I didn't realize how, and just like you're saying, how important it is to give children, to allow them to have their own thoughts and to communicate their thoughts. And this whole kind of, because I said so, is so dangerous. And I can't remember if I mentioned this before in my previous episode, but to let a child believe that an adult has the final word is so dangerous outside of the home. for them to stand up for themselves when something's happening that's not quite right, that's not sitting well with them, instead of them having their say over it, you've basically taught them, hey, listen, when adults speak, they're right, and that's the final word. And that can get people into dangerous situations that they're not comfortable with and they shouldn't be in. And the child isn't confident enough to be like, hold on, there's something very wrong with this situation. I want to go and tell someone, or I want to tell you, stop it, or I want to tell you, So I think that's really important, right? To kind of give them the confidence to be like, hold on a minute, I'm not comfortable with this.
Absolutely. I mean, from one side of our mouth, we say things like, I want to raise a critical thinker who stands up to, abuse, who knows who it is they are and can lead the next, their business or be an entrepreneur and risk taker. That's from one side of the mouth. And the other side of the mouth is, do as I say, don't speak up, you're rude if you have a voice, and just follow my way, or it's the highway.
But I think us changing, so again, one of the things that I learned is explanation with the things that I say. So I don't want you to do this is where it usually ended before.
Yeah.
And by me growing up. But
yeah.
I've started to try and bring up because A, B, C, and D.
Yeah.
Now, you can still do it, but I've given you the tools and the outcomes that I can see would happen and why I don't think you should be doing it, right? So I think allowing that second half of the conversation to come in makes things easier as well, because also once they do something and something happens, they remember, Baba told me that one of these things could happen.
Right, but what you said is so key. It's about the parent coming with this hammer, and going, that's it. And now end of discussion. And that creates an atmosphere in the house. Parents don't have to say it. It's an energy that kids absorb. That, my dad or my mom, I can't push them. I can't come back. I need to fall back. Versus a parent who very intentionally creates an atmosphere where children are empowered to speak up. Now, it can be uncomfortable for the parent because kids don't know the line, and sometimes they go too far. Like your kid was cursing. They don't know. They're practicing, right? Sometimes my daughter will talk to me as if she's talking to her friend, and I'll be like, okay, relax. Don't go so far because I've given you freedom. But the good thing about that is that if the parent can keep their ego in place and not take it personally, children can practice exactly what we want them to practice with us, which is to have a conversation, to feel safe, to have an alternative point of view, to be safe to say no, to be safe to say, I don't think so. That is practice for when they go out into the world, so they will never be abused and just be compliant, right? So we want compliance, but we want the risk taker out in the world. The two don't go together. You have to choose, because whatever you want them to be in the outside adult world, they have to practice with you. And that's uncomfortable for parents.
I totally agree with you. But again, I guess it depends on where the parent is. If they realize that this is one of the funnest games in the world and challenges, and see it as, which isn't easy to do, but once you've kind of got over yourself, and you start to kind of do your own point system in your head, like, oh my God, I can't believe that worked. Do you know what I mean? And I tend to do that a lot, where I'll try something and it works and I'm like, oh, this is fun. Let me see if I can do the other one. Do you know what I mean? Instead of just seeing it as just, this is this or this is that. I think if you can change your mind into seeing it as the challenge and having fun with it, then you kind of forget that you're parenting in a way. Does that make any sense?
Absolutely. So we're so focused on our identity as being the one who's right, who's in control, and we have to manage the situation, and these children are situations, and we have to get them from here to successful supersonic adulthood. If we approach parenting like that, which most of us do, we miss the whole point of children, which is that they are the most fun, most amazing, the gurus of living in the present moment. They just feel their feelings and move on. They have so much to teach us. Yes, are they annoying, frustrating, illogical, irrational, possessed at times? But if you can get over yourself, you said it correctly, which means get over your intention to be in control, your one focus, which is, I need to steer the ship to this thing called perfect adulthood. Get off that.
Again, you're nowhere near it yourself.
You're nowhere near
because
it yourself.
I'm a child wearing adult clothes as far as I'm concerned, and I love it. Like, do you know what I
I
mean?
always say we're adults who are toddlers in
Yeah, yeah,
tuxedos, you
yeah.
know. So absolutely. So if you just get over yourself, you're not perfect. You don't know what the future can bring. Stop pretending you're psychic and stop trying to be in control of the world, because there is no control. It's an illusion anyway. Let's enjoy this thing called childhood, because childhood is the only stage which is playful, which is mischievous and fun and experimenting. It's an adventure, but we are stealing childhood and its beauty from children. In our mania to get children to adulthood, we're taking them from one scheduled activity to the next, which is constant supervision by boring adults. Children need to play, children need space, they need to be with themselves, by themselves and with each other. But we are micromanaging them so much because we think it's good exposure. No, what we're actually doing is robbing them from their
Growing up,
right,
yeah.
their right to a childhood, because that's what will lay the foundation for a healthy adult, not the number of activities you take them to or how many places you take them to. They don't need to go to Mount Everest and to Timbuktu.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
They want to just be safe in the home, to play, to be unrestricted,
To express themselves,
to
yeah.
express themselves in their imagination.
All at the same time, we're doing this as adults while going, I wish I was a kid again.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And I think that was, again, an incredible thing that happened with my twins. Not only did they give me patience, but I was already a child in an adult's body,
Yeah.
but they brought back the simple things that I kind of forgot. So one thing that I really kind of made myself strict with is, and kind of learned to change, is to play dangerously but safely, if you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
when we're walking down, there's a railing. They always like to climb over the side of it and then go like this down the
Yeah.
whole thing.
Yeah.
Now, initially I was like, look, that's dangerous. And then I was like, no, that looks actually so fun. So
Yeah.
then I started doing it.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, they looked at me like, wait, you're not supposed to be doing that. Do you know what I mean? You're a big dude who's climbing over the railing and walking around.
Yeah.
And then I was just thinking, no, but this is so much fun.
Yeah.
Right. And it was difficult for me to kind of find the balance from being that protective parent, because obviously you don't want them to hurt themselves and you don't want them to fall on their head and you know, open their head up and stuff. But at the same time, you got to kind of just let them figure it out, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, if you keep helicopter parenting them all the time, and I've seen a couple, we have a family friend who, their child, they have two children, one of them's 3, one of them's 6.
You know, you're calling them out.
Yeah, I'm calling them out straight.
Yeah.
You're lucky I'm not saying your name. But they're very kind of like almost like, imagine having a giant beanbag around them when they're playing, kind of thing. And I'm just like, just let them fall over. It's the most beautiful
very
stuff was coming
anxious.
back with scratches. When I was younger,
Yeah.
like having scratches all over myself, and this bruise was when I fell out of that tree and stuff. That's like the best part of being a kid, right?
We're very anxious because we are putting this burden on ourselves that we got to protect our children against anything. And that's insanity. So we are over bubble wrapping them. And so then they become fragile because they pick up our anxiety. They believe that anxiety is anxiety making. Then they're scared of real life experiences. And we're hovering over them because we can. You know, when we were growing up, our parents were not around us all the time because they were busy.
Yeah.
But now we have so much technology to help us that it's actually making us more anxious because we're trying to protect our kids at all costs. And there's no such thing, you know, so we are conditioned. It's not our fault, but we need to really get a grip and change our way of parenting, because our children absorb this and then they limit themselves, right? They begin to think that, oh, it's bad to be anxious, or it's bad to be uncomfortable. It's bad to, you know, have any terrible experiences happen to us, because that's what the parents are telling them, that, you know, we can't let anything bad happen to you. But that's not life.
Yeah.
That's not real life. So we're actually creating fragility, not anti-fragility.
And how do we stop that huge hypocritical part of us? Because we will do that, and then they'll be like, where are you going? Oh, I'm going skydiving today. And it's like,
Yeah.
I want to just portray this whole safe thing, but I'm jumping out of a plane. And it's like, how do we kind of...
Yeah. Yeah,
find a
so
way
it's
around
it's
being a
about,
giant hypocrite, because that's basically what parents are. Because they'll say, don't drink that fizzy drink, it's bad for you, and then
yeah,
go out on a bender and drink for like 5 hours of
yeah,
alcohol and come back feeling like.
sure,
So there's a
sure.
very big kind of like where we're lying to them on one side, and
Yeah, yeah, and some part is normal because we are adults,
mm,
so some part is okay. But what you're really speaking to is, how can we embody what we want to teach, right? The greatest hypocrisy I believe in parenting is, oh, I want to have this amazing leader who's assertive, but then they're totally a slave to me, right,
mm,
at home. So we are the ultimate authority, even abusive, or the other way we are hypocritical is, don't scream, right? We'll
mm,
scream at our children. Oh, we'll hit our kids if they're hitting. We do such stupid things that are so hypocritical that we
mm,
are actually teaching the kid to be the thing we don't want them to be.
mm,
But we're doing it to them. So I think we have to check ourselves. We have to become self aware. We have to really ask ourselves, what are we trying to teach our children, right? If we live in fear, or we live in constant craving of external approval, which
mm.
we all do, right? We all want to be accepted for our image, for our behaviors. Then, of course, we're going to teach our children to be robotic as well. So we need to really watch how insecure we are, because that's what our kids are going to pick up. If we're insecure, if we are dogmatic, if we are ridden by fear, that's what they absorb. So we can talk a good talk, but they see how we live our lives, and that's what they will pick up on.
Totally. How do you balance being a conscious parent and trying not to shout and not hitting and these things with, how can I put this the best way? Okay, so I don't shout at my children, and all of these things has taken a lot of work and
Sure.
trial and error, and I've said this before, I will give the hey kind of thing, like if it goes too far. And I have the conversation with my wife that I don't want to be too kind to them, because the real world is not kind. So every now and then I will give a sharp stop or whatever, because if they were doing that outside, like I don't want them to be scared of because I remember I shouted once at one of the kids, and because I don't do it so much, when I did, the look on his face was shock horror. And I don't want him to have that, because he could be out, maybe not now, maybe a bit older, he's only 5, but where some random person will shout at them or will become aggressive to them. And if in the house there is none of that at all, isn't it more dangerous for them when
No.
they do face it?
No,
No?
I don't believe. So this is just
Okay.
my opinion. And in this book, The Parenting Map, I teach.
Let's hold it.
Yes,
Let's
hold it.
let's hold it up.
Time to give the book
Yeah,
some
yeah, yeah.
attention. So in this book, it's really the how to do what you're talking about. So there's this misbelief that, oh, if I'm too soft on my kids at home, or if I'm too kind and too conscious, the world is not conscious, then what am I teaching them? But let me tell you that that's not true, what you said. So let me explain. When you raise your kids to be empowered, to feel safe, to feel secure in their voice and their mighty assertion, they're allowed to say, no, I don't want the yogurt, or no, I'm not hungry, no more food, mom, or no, I don't want to kiss grandma. If they learn to be assertive without having to scream for their inner empowerment, to be heard, to be seen, that kid will go out into the world, and if they are abused, you're afraid, if God forbid that happen one day, they will be able to stand up because they've had practice. So the practice you want to give them is not to practice being afraid, so that they get over their fear, so that one day in the future when they abuse, they will not have fear. You want to have them practice be assertive, so that when they're out in the world, they'll be like, hey, you're not allowed to talk to me like that.
No, I get that. And I totally agree with you. But I feel like that works. And again, tell me to shut up at any time, because this is what you do and this is my opinion. But my humble opinion is that's right for a 9-year-old, for an 11-year-old, for a 12-year-old. But for a 5-year-old or for a 4-year-old, they're more audible, right? They're more like they're more emotional in a sense where they don't know what's going on more, right? They don't have
Exactly.
an understanding of
Exactly.
what this shout means or who this stranger is shouting at me or whatever.
Exactly. So the
Right?
father or the mother shouldn't do that, because That
Don't get me
has
wrong, I'm not running around the house shouting.
No, I know,
But-
but
yeah.
there is an idea out there. It's not you. It's just this idea that I need to toughen my kid up. But you're actually melting their brain because their brain cannot regulate the father or the mother screaming at them. I mean, I've done it to my 3-year-old, and my daughter literally crumbled in front of my eyes. I didn't do her any good.
Yeah.
She felt disconnected from me. She felt ashamed. I mean, I made a worse situation terrible. It was already a difficult situation. I made it worse by yelling and losing control. There is nothing noble that will come out of a parent who loses their control.
So that's our fault. That's our lack of patience.
Lack of regulation. We've become dysregulated. We scream and we yell. It has a devastating impact on the child in that moment. I don't know how long term. The child feels ashamed, embarrassed. Their brain cannot handle the intense stimulation. They get dysregulated. They feel unsafe, and they will remember that deep down in at a subconscious level. And you've created a disconnection. It has nothing positive out of it. The positive is teaching them to use their voice. Now, if they're 4 or 5 years old and they're out there and they meet a teacher who's negative, then they should feel very secure and safe to come home and say, Mom, that teacher was so mean to me, and for the parent to be their advocate, because they are too young to be outside with abusive people. So we hope to supervise them so they're not prey to abusive adults, including our parents, right? Sometimes it's our parents who are abusive to our children.
Yeah, I grew up in a dictatorship.
Yeah. So
like it was my mom, whatever she says goes, and that's it.
So maybe she'll be that way to your child. We don't know. So you need to protect your children from people who could be abusive to them.
So Dr. Shefali 1, AJ 0. So how do people prioritize spending enough time with their children, especially if both parents are working, and because it's difficult enough, right? When you have less time, what kind of things could you tell people to kind of help them utilize that small amount of time that they do have with them better?
Yeah, is to get off the phone, get off the screens, and just, depending on the age of the child, to really play with them, be present to them. When you're reading a book, be there. It's just simple things that we find so hard to do because our brains are so wired now to be constantly distracted. We just need to give them our focus, to communicate to them through our being. You are so important to me. I've put everything aside. You are the most important. I'm so thrilled to be with you. You make me so happy to be with you. Nothing is important, not the cleaning, not the laundry, not my business, you. Now, when a child gets a sufficient dose of the fact that their parent is just focusing on them, which is not, we don't have to do it more than 30, 40 minutes a day, but really be present. That child feels like, wow, my parent really cares. I am care-worthy. I am significant. I am valid. Now they walk out into the world with that strong foundation. Doesn't mean they won't break down. They won't have breakdowns. Doesn't mean they won't, have terrible situations still happen to them. We are not in control of the outcome. We're only in control of how we show up right here, right now.
The tools that we give them.
Right here. It's in the moment.
It's so crazy when you break things down to realize that all they really want is your time and attention.
Yes.
I experienced something with my eldest son when he was about 9 years old, and so we had separated, myself and his mother. So it was a messy situation. It was a weekends thing, and every weekend I tried to make him feel like going to dad's was Disneyland. I'd have all these things arranged and all these kind of things. And I remember one time I just couldn't think of anything. I didn't even have that much money at the time to do anything like Legoland or whatever with him. And this is in London, and I was speaking to my friend. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with him, man. And this is my friend who hasn't got kids or anything. He was like, do you realize that all he wants to do is just chill with you?
Yeah.
So I literally got on the underground train, and we rode the train from one side of the line to the other and back. And it was literally like 3-4 hours.
Yeah.
And that's all we did.
Yeah.
And it cost me £2.50.
Yeah.
And till now, he remembers that as one of the funnest days that he's ever had. Do you know what I mean?
Wow.
Just us people watching and looking out the window and
Yeah.
seeing.
It doesn't
and it's like
surprise me at all
the
because
simplest things,
children are so incredibly receptive
right?
and grateful for simple
Just
things.
for us,
Yeah,
just for us
yeah.
giving them
They're okay
the
with
attention.
that,
Yeah.
but we're not okay with that because we're entering this paradigm with this not good enoughness. So that's the whole problem. It's our not good enoughness that we create this whole production out of childhood. I did it too, till I realized, wow, I'm really not feeling like I'm enough. So I have to create all these activities and, make it a big production. When childhood really is just quite simply presence, connection, interdependence, bonding. That's all we need to do. And that would make parenting so much easier and last so much longer in the child's mind versus yelling at them, go practice piano, or hurry up, we have to go to the next activity. Instead of creating stress, which the kids don't like, they loathe it, they feel disconnected to us. Instead of making childhood a race to really nowhere, if we could just slow it down, keep it simple, and just give them what they really wanted for emotional nourishment, they would be better off with that approach than the other approach.
How do we change that kind of? And again, in Dubai, it's difficult because there's so much going on and it's so extravagant and the parties are so. How do we change that narrative in our head where we don't try to just fill their lives with, again, extravagance and all that stuff? It's just literally just spending more time with them and more quality.
Well, and
time with them.
also for the parent to not be a follower. It's okay if everyone else is having, $100,000 parties, which is insane. You do it differently. But I know it's difficult, especially if you live in a culture where everyone is doing it, then you feel like you're the odd one out. But as much
It's
as
more
you
you,
can,
right?
what?
It's more you worrying about what other people
What
think
other
of
people
you,
will
right?
say of you, and
'Cause
only
kids
the
don't care,
adults.
right?
It's
Yeah.
a comparison with adults,
Yeah.
right? So I remember when my daughter had, this coming to age party, everyone was having it. I remember feeling pressure, like, oh, everyone else rents out a ship or goes to Mars or something very extravagant, a mini wedding of sorts. And I thought it was so ridiculous. Invitations would come in like literal boxes, for a 12, 13-year-old. So I remember also being, not wealthy at all and sending out email invitations because I was like, I cannot be bothered
Yeah, I'm
with
not
the
gonna print. Yeah,
invitation.
yeah.
We're talking invitation, okay?
Yeah.
Just the invitation, which everyone throws out into the garbage. And I remember so many mothers of her friends calling me and saying, thank you, because now we can send emails. Like everyone's feeling pressure to keep up with the Joneses, but no one is having a good time.
Yeah.
So somebody needs to be brave enough to say, listen, this is nonsense. Our children will grow up entitled because of what we're teaching them. Then we complain. So it's up to us to change the tide. Like a 5-year-old having an extravagant birthday party is insanity, right? So we have to be brave to break the mold.
Yeah. I mean, it happens a lot in the Indian culture. A friend of mine was having a wedding, and it was a 5-day wedding.
Oh, it's insane.
And they said to me, honestly, dude, I knew about 6 people, and it was like a 700-person wedding.
Yeah.
Or more. I think it was even more than that.
Right.
And he was like, I didn't know anyone.
Yeah, it's very
And it's like,
sad.
it was for them. It wasn't even for me. And it kind of hurt.
Yeah.
It hurt his feelings. He was like, it's supposed to be my day, but my parents are having a wedding.
Yes.
I'm not.
Yes,
Like, do you know what I
yes,
mean?
yes.
It wasn't like
Yeah.
all of my close friends. It was this
Correct.
giant Indian wedding that went on for 5 days.
No, it is.
And all these people I didn't
feel
know.
so bad for him because he did not feel empowered to be assertive with his mom and say, you had your wedding, this is mine, and back off.
So it goes even to that age. It's not just children. It's
No.
like parents don't even stop doing it in the 20s.
Well,
and stuff.
and so again, who will change the pattern, right? Those are those parents conditioned because they were conditioned. They were puppeteered, they puppeteer. So when is this cycle going to end? And that's what I teach. End the disrupt the dysfunctional cycles, because otherwise you're going to do to your children what was done to you.
And it's just going to keep going
And it's
and
going to keep
on,
going. So when are
endless.
we going to stop?
We need to get out the Matrix.
Yes.
Show them. I know you're not a movie person because my
That-
whole
that
set
I
you were
know.
like, I don't.
That
yeah,
I know.
yeah. So we need to give them
Yes.
that. Okay. I'm trying to think of how to phrase this one. Divorce. I mean, being parents together is difficult enough.
It's difficult enough, yes.
Divorce. Your views on it, your ideals, your advice for people who are trying to raise children in two completely different households, single parent mothers?
Yeah.
Tell me.
Well, the problem with divorce is marriage.
Yeah, right.
The problem is not divorce.
You heard it here first with Dr. Shefali. Don't get married, guys, at
Well, I
all.
didn't say that, but there are problems. So you just need to be aware that marriage comes with this longevity model that says that if you stay together, that's success. So when we don't stay together, apparently we are failures, right? So I'm divorced, and I had to battle that within myself and really deconstruct this whole idea of marriage. Because if you buy into this idea that a successful marriage is an eternal one, then if you divorce, you're a total, complete, utter failure.
Especially in our cultures as well.
In most cultures,
Yeah.
even in the West, as West as you can be, it's still embedded.
But I don't
so
feel.
deep.
But I don't feel like in the West it's as much as.
Yes.
And I think here as well, especially for females in our cultures, it's a lot more.
Yeah,
a lot of stigma behind it. But we're in the West,
But there's still stigma. Yeah. It's like, oh, I'm so sorry. But let me tell you, no divorced person ever feels sorry for themselves because you only make that big decision because you've decided that it's not working for you. So instead of us feeling empowered, and what an empowering thing to say, this is not working for me. When we're stigmatized, we're told we're bad, or we're so, unethical, right? We're bad people. And what's stigma? And I'm here to say it's all a lie. Don't fall into it. You have a right to choose to break out of the matrix and leave a marriage if you are
unhappy and
grossly unhappy.
If it's not
of
serving
course,
you.
I wouldn't say that, leave on a whim, that there's a shiny thing out there. Don't leave with that idiocy, because that's idiotic. Work on the relationship, try to work on it, try to build and grow. But if there is an impasse, you also have every right to not stay in the marriage, and your children will actually be okay if you are okay leaving it and you truly are more empowered on the other side, right? If you're going to leave and be depressed, then stay in the marriage depressed. But if you're going to leave and be empowered, that is an amazing model to have given to your children, which is, I'm brave enough to change my life circumstance. I'm brave enough to live a different way. Those are positive messages. Now, having said that, co-parenting is all, up to the egos of the parent, just like parenting. So if you're co-parenting with someone who has a big ego and is vengeful and vindictive, it's going to be difficult. But so is marriage with someone who has a big ego. So you cut your losses. Where are you worse off? If you're worse in the marriage and you're going to show your children a better parenting model outside the marriage, then maybe outside the marriage is better. So get help. You deserve the help. Get a coach or a therapist to guide you through this. I wrote an amazing book called A Radical Awakening. People can read that.
That's about parenting after divorce.
Well, that's parenting through divorce, and what
okay.
comes about in the woman, especially. It's an empowering book for women. I talked about my journey, and get the help. It's not easy, and culture will push back because culture doesn't like, especially strong women, to be so empowered that they think they can leave the marriage. Right? Marriage is such a contract. It's such a bond, and it's a bond close to enslavement, where it's kind of, now I am enslaved to this institution. Now I'm controlled by this institution. Now I'm possessed by this institution. We possess each other.
Well, it's a business contract, isn't it? Really, when you break it down.
And that's the ego of marriage, which is the downside. People can choose to be in marriage through a soul partnership, just like parenting. Or you can choose to be in the marriage the typical way, which is the bondage way. I own you, you owe me your fidelity, and if you dare to break this bond, I will go after you. What sort of relationship is that? So we have to reframe marriage in a new way and do away with this institutional idea of control and possession.
Is this one way or both ways that you're saying it?
Both ways. Nobody owns anybody.
No, I'm just saying the way you're saying it seemed like more of a one way. Do you mean marriage in general is controlled both ways?
Yes.
Or okay,
Both people have this implicit idea that they now
own each other
own
kind of
each
thing.
other.
Yeah.
That's why we wear these rings.
I mean, till death do us part
Till
and all
death
that.
do
Yeah.
us part. And we wear these rings like I'm possessed,
Yeah.
I'm owned. You know, we have to even
Yeah.
declare it like with a big diamond, you know.
Yeah.
But really it's about freedom. It should be about growth. It should
Partnership,
be
yeah.
about partnership, that I'm here for you. And if you don't feel like you're thriving with me, I should actually help you exit. Says no one ever.
Yeah.
Right? In
Yeah.
fact, if you dare to say you're not thriving with me,
Yeah. Then there's something wrong with you.
then there's something
Yeah.
wrong with you.
Yeah.
And you are a cheater and you're a betrayer and you've betrayed me. I mean, come on. We're just two people trying to get along.
That's the problem. I think people, and again, it seems like this whole world is built on ego. And I think people, the problem with people, both with parenting, both with marriages, both with everything, is that people seem to think that they've got anything in this life figured out.
Yeah,
And that's a problem.
that is a problem.
Like, instead of going into a marriage going, okay, we both don't have any idea what we're doing.
So maybe
and
we
we're
like
not-
each other.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe, and let's check
And
back
it's about
in a year.
growing. Yeah, let's see the
keep
growth. Do
checking
you know what I
back,
mean?
you
And
know?
keep helping each other grow, because
Right.
people
I
just
like
think
you
that they're
now,
finished. Yeah, yeah.
But I don't know whether I will always like you. and
Especially
that's
when people get
okay.
married young, because
Of
between the
course.
ages of 19, I'd say 30, you evolve maybe 15 times as a person.
Yes.
Like, you just
Till
don't
40,
think
till
about,
45,
you just
yes.
don't even, like, if every 7 years, every cell in your body is dead and a new set of
Right.
cells has gone
Right.
completely. Like,
Your
you're not the
psyche's
same.
changing.
Then how do you expect to just be like,
Correct.
this is it forever?
Correct.
So
And it's
you have to understand that, right?
Correct. And it's particularly difficult when one partner grows and the other doesn't. So now the partner who's growing has
Can
to
see
face this
as well.
choice, like, should
Yeah.
I go back into the box or should I go into to fly in the sky? And it's difficult. And then the partner who dares to grow is made to feel guilty, right? Like, no, come back into my box. But you're not growing.
Yeah, yeah.
If both grew, then both would implicitly understand, even though it could be hurtful, the ego could be hurt, that it's okay if we grow apart. There's nothing sacrilegious.
It's very strange, because you wouldn't do that with friendships, would you? If you're starting to succeed and you're changing your
It's
life
okay,
and you're
right?
starting to grow, and you see some friends that are like, mate, you're still smoking weed in the shed at the end of
You're
the
allowed
garden.
to
Like, that's
grow,
not
right?
for me. Like,
Yes.
do
Yes.
you know what I mean? So instantly you'd be like, that friend's not for me anymore.
But you're not allowed
But
to
you're not
say
allowed to do that,
because
and-
it's a
yeah, yeah.
bondage. It's an ownership
Yeah.
implicitly, and that's what can be toxic about it. Not always, but
Hmm.
it can become toxic. Dare one grow at a different pace and accelerate in a different direction or pace, they will be faced with the biggest guilt.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's not fair,
Yeah.
because people should be allowed to grow.
Yeah. What is the parenting map?
The parenting map is a step-by-step, 20-step solution to really train the parent to be their most conscious. You know, I had other books on conscious parenting, but they were just the what and the why, like why it's so important, because I was breaking ground in a new way by revolutionizing the old parenting paradigm. And so this book is the how-to book. How does one actually do it? You know, okay, so if I go through all the steps and I give practice exercises, then at the end of this journey, you will emerge. If you do it earnestly and really let it imbibe in you, you will definitely be a transformed parent.
Guys, you got to read the book. Let's show it again. That's my own signed one that I'm keeping with that.
Yes.
Somebody thinks they're taking it home with them. DK, just take the book and put it under the table. So how would you deal with a parent that has a disabled child, and how do they navigate these issues that they have?
Right.
Because they're very different, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I have a friend of mine who has a child with Down syndrome. Now, raising that child is completely different, right? He goes through his own sets of experiences, his own sets of, I would say, his own level of patience.
Right.
How does somebody can they get the same advice from these books in that sense?
Oh my goodness. You know, many parents who have neurodivergent children or children on the spectrum or children with developmental disabilities, they kind of get the lesson faster than, quote unquote, the typical child's parent. Why? Because it's so obvious that they either have to adapt to this new reality or they're going to to sink, right? So they typically adapt, but there's much more pain. It's much more fire they have to walk on, because they have to really let go of that fantasy that they would be able to manifest this super being. None of us can manifest the super being, but the ones who are like more in the bell curve, we at least try. We keep trying, you know. But those where it's so obvious that the kid is atypical in some way and not falling in the typical bell curve, that parent is kind of spiritually slapped and whacked,
Yeah.
because they have to let go of their fantasy. It's not coming true. So that's a rude and brutal, but also instant awakening, where you either flow or you sink. So what does the parent want to do? But in those moments, what I've also found, when parents like just destruct their ego because they have to, they actually come on the other side of a beautiful surrender. And they embrace this as truly a teaching, because it is, right? They cannot predict the next moment. There's no illusion of prediction. There's never prediction, but you and I live in an illusion, right? So with that child, there's no illusion of prediction. It's life right here, right now, constantly. So that parent has to be so present that they really learn what wisdom teachings teach, which is enter the present moment. That's all you have. You cannot predict tomorrow. You have no control. And in many of these children's cases, they often are nonverbal. So you cannot even rely on your talking ego. And,
even less than you can't predict tomorrow. You can't predict the next half of the day.
Anything, right? So, and then you just have to rely on your energy, because many of these kids are nonverbal, but they will pick up on your energy. So you have to really
body language,
be
everything that
present
you're putting
and
out.
aligned. You can't bullshit your way, you know? You can't talk a thing and then do something else. You have to really be present. So, and if you don't take it as a spiritual awakening, say you resist it, you will suffer. You have to look at these children as the gurus to help you wake up and be present, because they are who they are and they will not be who you want them to be. So you have to align to them versus getting
the
them
other way. What are the core issues that you find, the trending issues in parenting, that, or mistakes that people are making, or things that come to you most when it comes to the clients that you have? What is there must be a few that's like, oh yeah, this one's easy to sort out. I've heard it a million times.
Well, the most basic ubiquitous issue is, basically the parent, and they don't say it so directly, but they're basically saying, what the hell is wrong with my kid? Like, my kid is wrong. Something is wrong with my kid. And what it typically turns out to be is that the parent just cannot accept who the kid is. They wanted X, they got Y, and the delta between this is the problem. But the delta is created by this, right? And the parent doesn't see that. They think it's the kid who's created the delta, but they don't realize that they set it up to have these perverse expectations, which have nothing to do with the kid's temperament. Like, I want my kid to be a scientist, and the kid is like this dreamer artist. So who creates the delta? We do. So that's where I always begin. What are your expectations? What were your fantasies? And right there, I will see the discrepancy and the problem. So another way that it manifests is that the kid is this, but because the kid reminds the parent of their problems, the parent will degrade the kid or dismiss the kid. So typically I'll see, like, say if you're raising a daughter and the daughter may have a weight issue or a beauty issue, something, if the mother has had an issue accepting her body or her weight, wow, like, put the kid on a diet and kill the kid, Similarly, and I'm giving you stereotypes, if the father wanted to be a super athlete and that's where the father gets their worth, then they want the kid to be a super athlete. And if the kid is this nerdy kid who doesn't want to play sports,
happens a lot,
big problem, right? So I'm giving you these ubiquitous trends. And all of us want the superstar kid. All of us want the extroverted kid, the sweet kid, the kid that makes us look good. The easy kid, like, just be amazing. Everything would be fine if you're just amazing.
And amazing for us as well, instead of focusing on trying to create the best human being for them,
right? So I remember when my daughter was growing up and her hair used to be so wild, and I was the kid who wanted, like, ponytails, and for myself, that was a good girl for me. And I remember when she was 4, like having to like clench my fist because I always wanted to clean up her hair. And I still have this problem. But I know it's my problem. Like I want her hair to look a certain way because I feel good versus let
Yeah.
her be. She's okay.
Yeah.
And for the most part, our kids are okay till we tell them they're not okay because we don't like that part in ourselves.
Okay, in a region like Dubai where we have nannies, live-in nannies, and
Oh, you
these kind of
do?
things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In this country, pretty much almost every family has a live-in nanny or a visiting nanny.
Yeah.
How do you kind of help the children grow up being able to look after themselves as opposed to just seeing everything being clean all the time and,
Yeah.
and clothes being washed
Yeah.
and these things? And
Yeah.
I mean, you want them to be like, hey, mate, just because we got a nanny doesn't mean you can leave your trousers on the floor there. Go and put them in the thing. But how do you kind of fix that issue of them being entitled for these
And
things?
you being entitled.
Yeah.
I grew up like this too. I had people all around me. So I loved it so much. But it did teach me bad habits, because I remember coming to America at the age of 21 and I had to do my own things. But for months I did not, because I was waiting for the help. And I realized, oh, there's no one coming.
You're like, I'm sure I've got more clothes
I
than
was
this.
like, I'm sure that somebody's coming to clean up, and no one was coming. So it did create these bad habits in me. Bad, I say bad with jest, but it's difficult, if they watch the parents, enjoying all these luxuries. So the good things about nannies here is that you do want your children to grow up with more than you around them as adults. You do want a tribe and a community. The next good thing about having help is that we do need help. Parenting has become such a stressful thing because it's two parents isolated,
Especially with twins.
and then you have twins and you have no help, and the parents are then stressed, and then the kids are. So it's because we've stopped living in villages or communities. You guys here live more communally than we do in, say, a typical Western country. The negative thing about having too much help is that, you raise children who are entitled to help. So there's a fine line. Maybe you can get the help 4 days a week, and then 3 days they're on their own. I mean, there's no easy solution.
It's a big problem here, especially as, I mean, we try to be super hands-on, especially when it comes to time with them. But you have families here who the nanny raises the kids, full stop.
Well, that's
you know
now
what I mean?
another issue, that the parents are not involved. So one thing is raising kids to do their own chores, right? So that's one downside of having a nanny. The kid won't do their own chores ever. But the real downside is that the parents use these surrogate proxies
Literally.
to raise their children. Well, then the children will remember that my dad wasn't around. So then we're losing our influence. When you give so much influence to an extra third party, you build their bond, but your bond decreases. So if parents are willing to give up, maybe the nanny is a better parent. Let me tell you. Let's not kid ourselves. However, the parent will be missed by the child, and the parent, more than anything, is missing out on their opportunity.
Especially those first 5 years and stuff. It's incredible how much they change. And
so
stuff.
you're losing out on your opportunity, and your kids will remember.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that I learned so much was awareness as well.
Yeah.
And to be okay with realizing you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Even what we were just talking about the other day, I remember saying to the kids, I was like, boys, like, go and put your stuff in the hamper. Do you know what I mean? And then I literally called my nanny and I was like, Ate, look at this. And I went into my room and my clothes were on the floor. And I was like, I just told them not to leave it there, but I've left mine there.
Yeah, it's a beautiful.
And she started laughing because she was like, you always do it. And I was like, yeah, I'm stupid, right? Like I told her, start telling me to do it because it's like ridiculous.
Right.
Like I literally just told them, hey, she's not here to do that for you.
Yeah.
And then I'm doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah, but you were so aware that you caught yourself that you were being
it's hilarious.
hypocritical,
It was funny.
right?
Yeah. What do you think is because fathers and mothers have different roles, right, in raising children? And I know that's a very weird thing to say because we have the same role, but there's a different dynamic between the both. What should be the dynamic or the roles of a father and a mother, in your opinion, that's most important? Is there one side that needs to focus more on one thing, or is there one side that needs to focus on the other thing, or is it more of a kind of fluid?
Well, it's very unpopular to say that there are different roles today, but there are, you know.
Of course
So,
there is.
right.
I took the red pill a long time ago. I'm not going to adapt to this new world that we're living in.
So the female, the mother, just naturally, most mothers have this. A maternal side, the caregiver, the nurturer, the protector, the one that the children typically will go to with their sicknesses, for nurturing, because there's an instinct there.
It's built inside
that
your
is built
genes,
inside our biology. So that's a beautiful thing, and I don't think women should give up on that, because that's the way we are superstars. No one can do it better than us when we embrace that side. Now, many women are dissociating from that maternal side and don't want to embrace it, and that's their choice. But it's a beautiful thing when they do, and children feel that. Now, it doesn't mean that the fathers should not embrace the feminine and the women should not embrace the masculine, but it just comes so much easier to the woman because it's our biological imprint. But for males, that doesn't mean they have to be all macho and assholes, right? They can relax on that extra masculinity, because children do get scared. It's just, there's something about when a man yells versus a woman yells.
I think they did a scientific test, and I think there was something about the tone in the voice that once it goes lower than a certain decibel,
it's like the
child vibrates differently inside when hearing it.
For the life of me, I could yell, I could scream at my kid, and she will not even flinch. But if her father just does half of that, it's like boom. It's just a different energy, right? But our children need a safe spot that the mother can give, and that we should embrace that, because that doesn't mean they're taking advantage of us. It means that they feel safe with us. And children need somebody in the house where they feel complete, like, okay, that person is my person, and I get to be whoever I can be, or without any severe repercussions.
Now, this is a very interesting thing. Prevention. Don't worry, I got the clock. Okay. I got the watch there. Let me just rewind it back so it looks like you got more time.
What are you doing?
Prevention is better than the cure. Now, I had maybe 7 people message me after Coach Mesa's episode who don't have children, saying all that information was incredible, but they don't have children. And how important do you think it is, again, prevention is better than the cure, to learn about all of these techniques, even if you don't have children? Because you have nieces and you have...
Oh, absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
This book, The Parenting Map, and all my books are all about becoming aware of patterns you've been living all your life. I typically say we're not living a life, we're living a pattern. And the patterns come from childhood, and we keep building new patterns, of course, but they're built on patterns. And these patterns influence everything we do. So part of awakening, whether you're a parent or not, is to deconstruct your patterns. And stage 2 in this book is all about deconstructing your patterns. So anybody can read that, because I talk about the fighter parent, the fixer parent, the different kinds of parents. So you can identify your partner's style, your parent's style. So it's about awareness, and awareness cuts across all people. You don't have to be a parent to become aware.
So kind of like making people aware that everybody has created their own limiting beliefs growing up, and their own kind of trauma that's going to seep in, whether they have kids or not.
We've all bought into the conditioning from childhood, and we've all bought into these institutions of marriage, of sexuality being a certain way, of religion, of success, of achievement, of happiness. All these have become institutions, very rigid ways of believing that we've all bought into, that could obstruct us at a certain point in time. So we need to awaken, means to not only heal your childhood patterns, but also these institutional patterns that we have so ingrained. Like, who is a successful person? Who is a good person? Who is a religious person? Who is a spiritual person? These are all very ingrained, and they limit our worldview because we hold on to them. And part of awakening is releasing our attachments to rigid belief systems and being open.
That's so interesting. It's like you created the 5 love languages, but the 5 parent languages instead.
Kind of.
Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah.
It's been absolutely incredible, and I'm a bit upset because I feel like we got another hour in us, but I know that you have things to do, and you've already promised that you're going to do another episode when you come back next
When
time.
I come back,
I mean, I just put
absolutely.
that on you, but I thought if
Of
I've got
course I
video
will.
footage of it, then we will do it anyway.
Of course.
Is there anything that you feel like 1 or 2 minutes is fine? Is there anything you feel like that we missed out that is important for people to hear?
Just that, life is not about these goals of success or happiness. Life is really about being your most authentic self. And therefore, as a parent, it's not about getting your kids to a finish line that's mythical in your head. It's about really connecting to them and allowing them to be who it is they are meant to be, whether it matches your fantasy or not. And grab a copy of my book.
Grab it for sure.
The
When will
Parenting
it be
Map.
out? It will be out
It's
tomorrow,
out.
right?
Yes.
It's out. Yes.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I need to grab a couple of copies. All right. I've got producers and people like waving at me in the background. I know that somebody upstairs is saying, cut, finish. But again, thank
It's
you
been a
so much
pleasure.
for taking
Thank
out the
you.
time and coming down. And we will get more the next time you're around. I've been AJ. It's been Dr. Shefali. Boom.